Hi everyone, Brian here back with a look at another GamePro magazine. This is GamePro number 70 from May 1995. You can see on the front here we have this lovely drawn artwork with the Comic Zone hero in it, and the artist drawing the panel, and he's busting out of the paper. You also see down here we have hot new game systems for 1995. There's the Sega Saturn, Sega CD Pro Strategy Guide for Eternal Champions, some pro review highlights, Metal Warriors, Spider-Man, Quarantine for the 3DO, Kirby's Dream Course, very good game, World Series Baseball 95, previews of games, Primal Rage for the home systems, so the home console ports of Primal Rage, Cyber Sled for PlayStation, Myst for PlayStation, and Chaotix, Knuckles Chaotix, which I believe that is for the 32X. So up here you see the standard banner that tells what systems it covers. So let's open this guy up and see what goodness is inside. Here, of course, you got the ads here for stuff relevant for the time. Spider-Man, Stargate, True Lies, and Warlock. These are ad for Blockbuster Video, and these are games you could rent there on the Genesis. Judge Dredd movie, and there was also the game port, for the game, or the game was coming out for the Super Nintendo, Genesis, Game Gear, and Game Boy. Here's an ad for Secret of Evermore, I believe. I was really excited for this game. You can see in the background you have the dog, which was your main companion in that game, and as you went through different dream worlds, he transformed into a different type of dog. Very fun game. It was Squaresoft's only U.S. developed game released, and I don't think it was released anywhere else other than the U.S. Very fun. If you have a chance to play it, play it. And for some reason I can really see it better looking at on the screen. It really pops out, the dog pops out, than in the print. You can see here. Here we go with the table of contents. We have features for Once and Future Kings, a video game hardware outlook. How the systems stack up in 1995. You see they have the PlayStation and the Saturn were going head-to-head. Cover feature on Comic Zone. The Sega Channel spreads nationwide. Sega has a way to get inside your home. Surfs Up online video game information, Part 1. Cruise the Worldwide Computer Network for juicy game info. Weapon Lord Part 4 Strategy Guide. There was a 4-part Weapon Lord Strategy Guide. The fighting game from that time. Eternal Champions on Sega CD Strategy Guide. SWAT Pro, Secret Weapons and Tactics. Some SWAT Pro specials, NBA Jams Tournament Edition. And the Fighter's Edge had move list for Killer Instinct and Virtual Fighter 2. Here we have a one-page ad for Beyond Oasis for the Sega Genesis. Beautiful looking game. GamePro May 1995. For the Genesis Tough Man Contest, Stargate, Spider-Man, True Lies, No Escape, Echo Jr., Sega CD, Fatal Fury Special, Road Rash, Trivial Pursuit, Wheel of Fortune for the 32X, Tempo, which I still want to play, Brutal Above the Claw, Motocross Championship for the Super Nintendo, Spider-Man, Metal Warriors, Kirby's Dream Course, as I said, awesome game, Wing Commander 2, Vengeance of the Kilrathi, Kirby's Avalanche, Izzy's Quest for the Olympic Rings. This was around the time, I think, the Olympics in Atlanta, and they came up with a mascot, Izzy, for the Olympics, and he had his own game. For the 3DO, Quarantine Emergency. For the Jaguar, Double Dragon 5, CDI had Jeopardy and Lemmings, Game Boy, True Lies, and Pinball Fantasies. World Players Realm this month, The Savage Empire for the SNES, Beyond Oasis for the Genesis, Dungeon Explorer for the Sega CD, Rise of the Phoenix for the SNES, and sports pages. Here's an ad for the Gold Star manufacturer model of the 3DO. Looking at the awesome GamePro art galleries here, you see the great artwork that talented people, kids mostly, would send in with their letters in GamePro with hopes of winning a t-shirt. And I actually got contacted by somebody a while ago who, it was very nice. They saw their artwork in this magazine and left a comment, and I actually scanned it for them and sent it to them, and it was nice to have that, that little tie and be able to, help them relive their memories of that, because it was some of the stuff in the artwork, it was very good, and a lot of people, they lost it. They didn't send it back to them, so it was nice to send it to them, and I scanned it and sent it to them, and so that was cool to have a little bit of nostalgia. They could relive that little bit of nostalgia. So if you're watching this and any of this artwork is yours, let me know, and I will happily scan your artwork and get it to you. And here's what I was talking about. Izzy. He had his own platform game. And there was a contest for Izzy where you could win a stereo TV, a 3DO, and speakers and a stereo receiver. Here's an interesting piece of artwork, is Beavis and Butthead in Super Punch-Out called Moron Punch-Out. And you see Butthead as Bear Hugger. Here's some awesome is that Earthworm Jim artwork? Street Fighter 2 artwork. Just awesome. I was always jealous. Well, as a kid, I drew some, but the stuff that they'd send in was just amazing. And here's the cutting edge, Nintendo's Satellaview and Apple's Pippin. So we have Satellaview will bring Nintendo interactive programming into Japanese homes via a satellite and the BSX cartridge. So you see it was an attachment that went on the bottom, it looked like, and a special cartridge that popped in the port in the cartridge slot. I'll read a little bit about it. While Sega is launching the Sega Channel via cable in the US, see Sega Channel spreads nationwide. In this issue, Nintendo plans to broadcast its programming from outer space. Satellaview is an add-on device for the Super Famicom, the Super NES in Japan counterpart, that decodes signals from Nintendo's own satellite TV channel. Excuse me. Satellaview subscribers will be able to play interactive games and watch special interactive TV programs. Although plans are still in the works, subscribers will be able to download games to play and preview additional programming, calls for quiz shows, and music videos. St. Giga, the satellite channel doing the broadcasting, will transmit its signal in the bandwidth of WOWWOW, one of Japan's satellite channels. Nintendo has contracted to broadcast daily from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And here's how it says, to download games, you need the Satellaview unit and a cartridge called the BSX Special Broadcast Cassette, which contains the decoding software. The Super Famicom sits on top of the Satellaview and links to it via a connector underneath the Super Famicom unit. The SNES has one too. The BSX cartridge slides into the top of the Super Fam cartridge slot. Subscribers will also need a satellite dish and a commercial decoder. Nintendo's lips are sealed regarding an American version of Satellaview. At press time, satellite broadcasts in Japan were slated to debut April 1st, no fooling. So that's a little bit about the Satellaview. Very interesting. I don't remember reading that as a kid. Here's a bit about the Apple Pippin. I think this is Apple's foray into the console market. I'll read just the first paragraphs. 2 more players are attacking the next generation system tree. Bandai and Apple Computers. Apple is developing a CD-based game system for Bandai, codenamed Pippin. Bandai will call the unit the Power Player, and it may be released as early as fall '95 for reportedly $500. The Pippin is a CD-ROM unit with a Power PC chip at its core. The 66 MHz PC603, a quad-speed disk drive, 6 megabytes of random access memory, CD-quality 16-bit sound, and a modified version of the Macintosh operating system. Among other features, the unit will reportedly also include computer network support. So that it failed, and did not really catch on. So I don't know much about it, but this little article tells some about it coming out. Here's an ad for Metal Warriors, a game I never played on the Super Nintendo. Never even remember seeing or hearing much about. Hot at the arcades, Night Warriors, Darkstalkers Revenge. Street Fighter the movie. This is in the arcades, the game of the Street Fighter movie. Here's an ad for the Super Game Boy. Crashing the Color Barrier. Here's the same ad. Pretty big ad space they put out for this. Wow, and here's the same ad. So Nintendo was really advertising the Super Game Boy. Very cool peripheral. You can get them real cheap, like $5. Save $5 on the Super Game Boy. Unfortunately, this coupon expires December 31st, 1995, so I unfortunately missed out. And there's you get a free player's guide, which I think I have the player's guide for that. I might. I think I have the regular Super or Game Boy player's guide. Special feature, Once and Future Kings video game hardware outlook. So this looks at the new consoles coming out, or the new add-ons coming out in 1995. And for those who don't know, that time in 1995 was a very unique time in the video game industry in history. It was a time where CD-ROMs were gaining accessibility and popularity. Storage and cost of manufacturing for games was going from cartridges to digital CD devices and media. So cost to manufacture those went down a lot. And they were experimenting with what worked and what did not work. So you see a lot of early 3D games or CD-ROM based systems here. So start with the first one, the Sweet 16, Nintendo Super NES. Install base 16 million at the time. Sega Genesis. Install base 16 million. These were the two kings at the time at their height. 1995, it was still very, very popular, the Genesis and Super Nintendo. It wasn't until 96 and 97 where the N64 and Saturn took over for Nintendo and Sega, but this time was huge. The 3DO, Very early CD-ROM based system. Very expensive, priced at $400. So you can see installed user base 200,000. Game price $60 to $70. System $400. Debuted October 1993. Current library of games 70. I actually had a friend who had a 3DO, and I quite enjoyed it. I played Road Rash, Twisted, The Horde with Kirk Cameron, Guardian something. It was an RPG, which I recently picked up. And there was a game, Killing Time, which was a fun game, and I quite enjoyed the 3DO. It wasn't worth $400 at the time, but as a kid, it was totally out of my price range. The Atari Jaguar. Game library 30. Number of licensees 200. Installed base 150,000. So the CPU 64-bit Motorola 6800 processor with 4 custom processors. The system price $160. $140 for the add-on to the Jaguar CD. So there was an add-on of a Jaguar CD that popped on the top. And you have the Neo Geo here. This was, I never knew anybody who had one. I never knew much about it, never saw one in stores, didn't know anything about it. It was always this mythical thing. Game price $200. CPU 16-bit Motorola 6800 processor with custom SNK processing chips. You can see the Motorola 6800 was very popular at the time. Installed base not available. Number of licensee 32. Game library 40. Cost of the system $649. In November 1991 it debuted. Game price of $200. So yeah, that was yeah, I couldn't believe that as a kid. That was insane. The Neo Geo CD. Game price $49 to $69. System price $400. So I'm going to read a little bit about it. Overseas, Neo Geo CD games look gorgeous and played well, and the arcade games that never made it to the cartridge systems will appear for the CD. Overseas units, however, are plagued by outrageously slow access times. SNK reports that consequently, US CD systems will house a double-speed disk drive. If you seriously want to bring a good arcade game home, consider this investment. But use your stopwatch before you use your credit card. So yeah, it was a very slow load times on the games, but it allowed you to play some Neo Geo games without the cost of $200 per game, because the games were more reasonably priced at $49 to $69 because of the low cost of manufacturing that media. Debuted 1994 in Japan and UK. July 1995 US. System price $400. Games 54. And installed user base, nobody knew. Not available. Philips CDI. Installed base 1 million. This Philips CDI was the first dedicated CD-based electronic entertainment system, but Philips seemed content to stick with the technology and stay in the shadows. Despite its respectable CD library, although there are bona fide gems such as Burns Cycle and The Seventh Guest, inconsistent game quality put the CDI at a disadvantage against other high-powered game producers. So it ran on a Motorola 6800 CPU as well. Game prices $29 to $69. System price $400. Debuted in 1991. And the Sega 32X. CPU Sega Genesis required. Install user base 500,000. Game library 25. System price $150. Wow. Game price $60 to $70. Sega CD and CDX console. When the Genesis goes, so will the Sega CD and the CDX. Though it is entirely possible that Sega Saturn CDs could help keep the Sega CD Embers glowing with modified versions. 32X does wonders for the Sega CD, CD's graphical resolution, but that meager 32X game library won't entice you. Here we go. Primed and ready. These are ones coming out. Outlook. This is the Sega Saturn. Outlook. Looking extremely good. Excuse me. That was a yawn. I'm sorry. The Japanese version of Virtual Fighter, along with early peeks at a Daytona USA and Shinobi, should convince any skeptic that Saturn's going to blast off in the US. Debut November 1994 in Japan, and at this time it was out in Japan, not in the US yet. It's set to debut in November 1995 in the US. System cost $350. Here's the Nintendo Ultra 64. Although most people have never seen an Ultra 64, Nintendo quietly promises a 1995 debut, even as the Saturn and PlayStation continue to steal mucho thunder when it does appear. Excuse me. Though Nintendo has the software savvy and the business muscle to establish it as a major machine, figured to make a video game buying decision among 3 major game systems in 1995, but gamers everywhere are anxious to see what 64 really means. Set to debut in the fall 1995. System price approximately $250. CPU 64-bit MIPS custom processor. Here's the one that would lead that generation, the next generation, the Sony PlayStation. Outlook, also looking extremely good. Sony is new to the system game, but the predictions here is that it'll be a monster. If it can maintain the same high standards with its games that it obviously did with the PlayStation hardware. Ridge Racer and Toshiden, see Overseas Prospect in April, are awesome craftsmanships of PS PlayStation potential. Debuted November 1994 in Japan with a system price of $350. CPU was a 32-bit LSI custom processor. Install base of 500,000. Number of licensees is 97. Game library of 19. So relatively new still in Japan. Not out yet in the US, I do believe. And here's a little rip on the NES. And because I love the NES, I'm going to read this. Here we go. Nintendo Entertainment System, 1985 to 1995. We lost a dear friend recently at the Winter Consumer Electronics Show this past January. Nintendo announced its plans for the 1995, including upcoming Ultra 64 console, the Virtual Boy 3D portable system, and continuing support for the SNES and Game Boy. Nintendo also announced, however, that it had officially retired the venerable NES from its lineup and has no plans to release new games, something most licensees had decided long ago. Virgin's The Jungle Book was the last third-party game released for the NES. Nintendo will continue to support the NES with phone tips, but it has stopped manufacturing the 8-bit console. This move serves as the final nail in the coffin of a dedicated servant that lasted nearly 10 seasons, as with the cunning companions that's an eternity in video game years. Oh, it says, as with a canine companion, that's an eternity in video game years. Nintendo can take heat in the fact that it's sold 34 million NES systems in the US since the product's launch in 1985, and that millions more were sold worldwide in addition to the Famicom, the older brother to the NES. With all the competition that's taking place in the video game industry, it's not likely that any hardware producers will post numbers like that for some time. The NES appeared at a time when electronic gaming was down in the dumps, and it rekindled a fire in the industry. GamePro takes this opportunity to bid a fond sayonara to this veteran game platform. As we look forward to the 32-bit and 64-bit systems, look back on this groundbreaking and relish on this look back on this groundbreaker and relish the memories. Indeed, well put. And here's a little 2-cut spread on games of the NES. Over its decade of use, the NES has seen a variety of 8-bit games. See how these memorable titles compare with your NES favorites. And here's about the early days of GamePro. In 1989, GamePro's humble beginnings included being given away at Toys R Us with a video game purchase. Of course, the NES was the meat of GamePro's editorial pages. In that issue, we reviewed NES games like Adventure Island, Operation Wolf. The Cutting Edge provided info on such NES peripherals as the U-Force and Power Glove. The first overseas prospects featured the Famicom version of Super Mario Bros. 3. Now, you'll excuse my long reading for that section, but I thought it needed to be read because that was a very interesting section in this magazine, because even they knew that this was a very interesting time in video game history with all the new consoles coming out. And I don't think we'll ever see a time in video game history where that many consoles come out at a time in history like that. Or that many consoles are coming out or are out at the time. The Sega Channel. Imagine having a library of 50 new games each month. How about getting previews of unreleased games, cheats, hot games, news, contests, and more? It's real, and it's called the Sega Channel. The Sega Channel is a partnership between Sega of America and the two biggest cable operators, TCI and Time Warner. After successfully beta testing in a dozen U.S. cities last year, this innovative service is now established in 18 metropolitan areas. It's currently available in such cities as Pittsburgh, I had no idea about that, Houston, Denver, and it's making its way across the nation. See sidebar to tune into the Sega Channel. You need a Genesis, but gameplay varies from the traditional cartridge plug-and-play. Your local cable TV system provides a special adapter, plugs into the Genesis card slot, and connects to the incoming cable feed. Setting up the Sega Channel service on one TV doesn't affect the other cable connections you may have in the house. When the Genesis unit is turned on, the special adapter locks in onto the Sega Channel. Very interesting little add-on for Genesis. I had no idea it was in Pittsburgh. That's the biggest city, near the biggest city I grew up in. I grew up near there and currently live in Pittsburgh. Special feature. This is interesting. Online video game information part 1. Maybe it's time you used your thumbs for more than punching buttons. If you cruise onto the Worldwide Computer Network, you'll find all sorts of mouth-watering game info. Part 1 of this 2-part feature focuses on information about games from game companies in the next issue. Part 2 will help you game companies. In the next issue, Part 2 will help you track down tips. Instant game information is only keystrokes away if you have access to a personal computer and are connected to such online computer networks as the Internet, CompuServe, and American Online. Whatever your need, a level, select code, tactics, or beat a boss, or a release date for an upcoming game. You can find game developers and fellow gamers online. Help. Very interesting about the early days of the internet. Glossary of terms: browser, email, homepage, internet, mailing list, World Wide Web, Usenet, newsgroup. Weapon Lord, another making of the development, testing, debugging, and balancing of Weapon Lord. Ad for the X-Band. Ad for the Jaguar here, $159. Wish I could go back in time and buy it. There has to be 1 or 2 games on the Jaguar that's worth playing. Mario Picross. Metal Warriors. Here's the Eternal Champions Pro Strategy Guide. Kirby Dream Course. Very fun game, like a mini golf game with Kirby as the ball. If you can play it, I highly recommend it. Still haven't beaten it. I'm still playing it. And I'm near the end. I got about 2 more courses to go. They're like worlds. Role Player's Realm, The Savage Empire, Worlds of Ultima. I never even heard of this game. Beyond Oasis for the Genesis. Dungeon Explorer for the Sega CD. I want to go back to Beyond Oasis. Got pretty good reviews. Rise of the Phoenix for the Super Nintendo. Never heard of it either. True Lies had a Game Boy port, much like Game Boy was huge then, so it got a lot of ports. Wow, and this actually got a 1.0 in Fun Factor for Pinball Fantasies. I never saw a lot of 1.0 scores in GamePro, so that had to be pretty bad for them to rate that low. Some tips, some codes here for Donkey Kong Country, 50 lives, Bad Buddy Quick Tip, Trick, and Sound Test. Here's a code for X-Men Children of the Atom on the arcade to play as Akuma. The Lion Code King for Super Nintendo, level selected and invincibility. NBA Jam Tournament Edition, play as Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Prince Charles, The Fresh Prince, Jazzy Jeff. Top dollar for your games. Fighter's Edge, Killer Instinct combo list and move list. I think this is for the arcade. I don't think the Super Nintendo version of Killer Instinct was out yet. Virtual Fighter 2 combo and move list. GamePro Labs. Eye on the Eye. In the wake of all the hype over next-generation systems, the CDI Interactive Player, CDI by Magnavox, has already reappeared with a lightweight, compact design. The CDI plays music CDs, photo CDs, and with a digital video cartridge, it plays the latest CDI movies, CDs, and full-motion video games. .3DO remote control. 3DO gamers who prefer to lounge back and play without the restraints of a cord. Nakitech has a pair of wireless controllers for you. Flat-faced and black, these controllers are very similar in design to the Panasonic 3DO controllers. Unfortunately, like the Panasonic 3DO controllers, they also don't fit comfortably in your hand. Button B, however, is positioned a little higher on the new pads. This staggered layout makes the buttons more accessible. Buyers beware. Here's a little something that looks like a virtual reality headset. After seeing Virtual IO's PDS's Gamers and GamePro Labs, December 1994, I thought it might be a reasonable alternative to buying another TV. This is where virtual reality and reality are worlds apart. Not only did the design change to something that resembled a bad sci-fi movie prop, but the list price more than doubled on the base model and more than tripled on the top-of-the-line model. In labs, you call $250 pricey. At $599 and $799, a better word would be history. Virtual I/O. So a spokesperson from Virtual I/O responded, and here it is. $599 is a list price for the eyeglasses, which is a different unit from the one mentioned in the magazines. The PS Gamer is not yet out. The developmental stage through Virtual I/O hopes to release it sometime later this year. The PS Gamer is still expected to retail at around $250. So early virtual reality stuff. GamePro hasn't reviewed the eyeglasses, but we'll take a look at them in a future GamePro Labs. Question: I was planning to buy a Game Genie, but a friend mentioned that it may erase the memory of save games. Is this true? A representative from Game Genie Technical Support states, it's true that some codes will erase the memory of save games. This problem does not happen with codes from Galoob, the maker of the Game Genie. A master code is sometimes required, as with Super Metroid, that protects save games. If a game's memory is ever in jeopardy because of a code, we will notify you in the instruction manual of whether Galoob-sanctioned codes can be found. GamePro hot picks for guides here. Pitfall, The Mayan Adventure, Final Fantasy III Player's Guide, Super NES Power Player's Guide, 1995, Super Return the Jedi, Luffy and the Fortress of Doom, Genesis Power Player's Guide, Brain Lord, and Phantasy Star 4 Official Player's Guide. You can order them here. It's like they were $9.50 each. Pro Shorts Comic Zone coming out. This was a Genesis game where you fought along a comic book panels. You can bust into panels. You like swung through the panels, like went from panel to panel fighting different enemies. Very unique concept. Very pretty looking game. Chaotix. This is Knuckle Chaotix, I believe. Mad Dog 2, The Last Gold. Full motion video game. Sequel to Bad Dog McCree. Excuse me. Shining Force on the Sega CD. Cyber Sled on the PlayStation. This is overseas games for the PlayStation, which was newly released in Japan. Cyber Sled, Myst, and Cosmic Race. Look at these very early primitive 3D graphics here. Bug, Solar Eclipse. Classic and Orphan video games. 24-hour order info online. Info line. I would actually like to call these lines and see if they're still in service. Sometime maybe. Pro News. Ultra 64 Dream Team. Nintendo is fielding what it calls its Dream Team for the Ultra 64. The company held a conference for gamers on CompuServe with Nintendo executive Minoru Arakawa, Howard Lincoln, and Peter Main discussing sessions which was billed as 3 men and a modem. Part 2. The trio announced that longtime computer game publishers Sierra Online will develop games for the Ultra 64. Sierra's first efforts will be Red Baron, a 3D World War a flying computer game that's already a hit on PCs in the Imagination Network online gaming service. GameTech and Angel Studios are also suiting up. GameTech's first product, Robotech, will feature real-time 3D character animation. Angel Studios, a newcomer to the game industry, is an award-winning virtual reality and 3D program developer. If you've seen the movie The Lawnmower Man or Peter Gabriel's music video Kiss That Frog, you've seen Angel's work. Angel Studios is working on its new game with a group that includes Shigeru Miyamoto, creator of Super Mario and Donkey Kong games. Tiger grows with games. Sega of America has signed an agreement to let Tiger Electronics manufacture, market, and distribute the Sega Toys line. These products include Pocket Arcade games and pods. This arrangement doesn't include Sega Electronic teaming. This arrangement doesn't include Sega's electronic learning aids Pico and Wonderbook, a portable version of Pico. Silicon Graphics shops for software. First, Microsoft purchased Soft Image, the computer graphics software powerhouse, last year. Now another major merger is in the works, one that would bring a pair of computer graphics focuses, Alias and Wavefront, under Silicon Graphics SGI umbrella. SGI's purchase of the two companies at a reported price tag of $500 million will give the hardware manufacturer substantial strength in the software field. 32X update. The trickle of 32X titles, now totaling about a dozen, might be slowing even further. The industry buzz is that the Genesis add-on might have had its window of opportunity closed by a slow market and the inclination among consumers to wait for the next wave of game machines like the Saturn and PlayStation. Major publishers such as Capcom and Konami have already killed existing 32X projects so they could leap directly into developing games for the upcoming systems. What this does for Nintendo's planned Neptune system, a Genesis and 32X combined into one unit, isn't definite. So they're pointing out that, that 32X, it's pretty much dead. Developers have jumped to the Saturn, and the Neptune ended up not coming out, unfortunately. 3D graphics help. Argonaut Technologies has created a real-time 3D rendered package that will make designing 3D games and virtual reality applications easier. BR Renderer is a small piece of programming code that works with the developer's programming to speed up and enhance the creation of the 3D environments. It provides developers with unlimited cameras and light sources, as well as clean texture mapping for realistic-looking objects and scenes. Nintendo changes service. If you call Nintendo for help, you'll notice a difference in how that service works. Nintendo has expanded its phone services to include a 24-hour automated message line, a pay-per-minute 900 number for game counseling, and the continuing operation of its 800 number for product questions. According to Nintendo, its 430 gameplay counselors, GPCs, and consumer service representatives, CSRs, handle nearly 120,000 calls a week. This change will help customers get the help they need. Nintendo's previous counselor line now is now an automated game helpline with menus that gamers can navigate through via their touch-tone phone. A new number has been established for talking to gameplay counselors, with a surcharge of 99.5 cents per minute. Canadian gamers get a similar service for $1.25 a minute. Nintendo's toll-free number enables you to talk to consumer service representatives about the company's product line, get help hooking up your Nintendo system, and inquire about product service information. The Sega Channel hosted exclusive The Great Earthworm Jim Race in January, allowing its subscribers to compete against others to find a secret room in a custom version of Earthworm Jim. The first 200 subscribers to reach the room received a code along with toll-free number to call. No one got a head start on the Great Earthworm Jim Race on the Sega Channel. The contest winners, Vince Salvi of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who competed the game in under 40 minutes, walks away with an all-expense-paid trip for two to Los Angeles to meet the team that created Earthworm Jim at Shiny Entertainment. Illusion of Gaia for $64. Early Magic the Gathering cards for $8 a pack. Just love looking at the prices of these old games. And back then, $60, $70 for games, not unheard of because of cartridges. And wow, that was an especially long episode. I apologize for that. If you stuck with me on this, thanks for going down this trip in memory lane with me for this issue of GamePro for May 1995, number 70. A time of change in the console industry, and one that's looked back on as a time of height of video games during the mid to late 90s. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If not, you just scrubbed ahead to see the different pages, and I thank you as always, and have a great rest of your day. Until next time, bye.